Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open the toolkit that governments and central banks use to try and steer our economies, especially when things get choppy.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? And the answer? Well, it affects everything from the price of your coffee to the security of your job. We're about to break down the 4 key tools that can literally make or break a country's economy.
So here they are. These 4 instruments are the absolute core of any government's economic playbook. When they're used correctly, they can create stability and growth. But when they're mismanaged, well, that can lead to a real crisis. Let's take a look at each one. All right, first up is fiscal policy. You can basically think of this as the government controlling the nation's purse strings.
So what does that actually mean?
It's really just about the government's wallet. Through taxes and spending, it can either hit the economic accelerator by pumping cash into the system, or it can tap the brakes by taking it out.
And this really gets to the heart of the classic tightrope walk. If you spend too much to boost the economy, think big stimulus packages, you risk runaway inflation. But if you cut back too much to try and balance the books, you might just trigger a recession. It's a constant, high-stakes balancing act.
So, you see, the crucial point here isn't just about spending more or less. It's about spending wisely on things that create long-term value, maintaining the trust of investors and making sure you're not just kicking a giant debt problem down the road for someone else to deal with. Okay, so while the government is handling the budget, there's another huge player in the game, the central bank. And their main tool is monetary policy, which is all about managing the money supply itself. The central bank's #1 job really is to keep inflation, that's the rate your money loses value, stable and predictable. Those interest rate announcements you're always hearing about, yep, that's them, trying to influence everything from your mortgage all the way to big business investments. And that job has become incredibly complex. I mean, money zips across borders in seconds. A decision made by the US Federal Reserve can shake economies on the complete other side of the world, and digital currencies are just changing the game completely. And because of all that complexity, these 3 pillars are now absolutely vital. These days, what a central bank says it's going to do is almost as important as what it actually does. Building that trust through clear communication is now a core part of the job. Okay, now let's zoom out a bit. The next 2 tools are what connect a nation's economy to the rest of the world and really to its own future. We're talking about exchange rates and public debt. Think of this policy as the bridge between your country's economy and the global market. It determines how expensive your country's goods are to foreigners and how much that new phone you imported is actually going to cost you. And here we go again with another classic dilemma. Do you let your currency's value just float freely? That helps absorb economic shocks, but it can be wildly unpredictable for businesses. Or do you try to keep it stable, which is great for trade, but can be incredibly hard and expensive to defend against market forces? And our final instrument is public debt. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like the country's credit card. Borrowing money today can fund crucial investments in things like roads or schools, but it's a bill that future generations are going to have to pay. And this is so important. The key takeaway here is that debt itself isn't inherently good or bad. It becomes a major problem when it's managed poorly. When it's hidden from view, when it's not lined up with other economic goals, or when it's just used to fund things that don't generate any future growth. Okay, so we've looked at the 4 tools one by one, but now we get to the secret ingredient, the most important concept that ties them all together. This is where real strategy comes into play. This right here, this is the central insight of modern economic management. You can have the best fiscal plan in the world and the best monetary plan in the world, but if they aren't working together, they can fail spectacularly. In fact, using them in opposition to one another isn't just ineffective, it's a surefire recipe for disaster. Let's look at a classic example of what happens when these policies are totally out of sync. Just look at this. You've got the government trying to boost the economy by spending more, which is probably going to drive up inflation. Well, at the exact same time, the central bank sees that inflation risk and tries to cool things down by jacking up interest rates. So the government is hitting the accelerator while the central bank is slamming on the brakes. The result? Total economic whiplash and a complete loss of stability. So we've covered the tools, and we've seen why coordination is so absolutely critical. Let's bring it all together for the final takeaway. At the end of the day, the goal for any economic leader is to shift from just analyzing one policy at a time to designing a coherent, integrated strategy. It's about making sure the government, the central bank, and your international policies are all rowing in the same direction. And that's really the ultimate challenge, isn't it? In a world that's always changing, just mastering these four tools isn't enough. The real art is making them all work together. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.